Welcome. You have entered the place inside. This is podcast number 18. I am your host, Laurence Galian. In the Gospel of Thomas, one of the Gospels which the Christian church tried to hide, they actually burned all the Gospels that they found that they did not want in their official version of the New Testament. But some people at that time knew the great value of these Gospels and the Gospel of Thomas in particular, and they carefully buried these Gospels. And then, the year that Mac Brazel found on the ranch the remains of a crashed UFO, that year being 1947, Muhammad Ahmed al-Hamed, a young Bedouin living in Bethlehem, found a jar containing these Gospels, which the church did not want you to ever read. Oh, and maybe you think that it was the Catholic Church back in the year 400 that did not want you to read these Gospels. No, the Christians, or whatever name is best for those who seek to distort the real meaning and message of Jesus Christ, they don't want you to read these books. A televangelist recently said on television, quote, "Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are enough for me," unquote, as he laughed. Read the book, The Dead Sea Scroll Deception. This conspiracy is still going on today. Scrolls have mysteriously disappeared. People, scholars, who have been given the scrolls to translate and decipher have been dragging their feet for over 60 years now. Here we have the very words of Jesus, and people don't want you to know what Jesus said. Other scrolls have completely disappeared, or portions of them. I am sure that many of them are in the bowels of the Vatican, but the Catholic Church is not the only Christian church responsible for making many of these scrolls disappear. Don't take my word for it. Read the Dead Sea Scroll Deception. But even more important, read the scrolls that have been translated, like the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Philip. These are filled with light power energy, initiatic energy. Our young Bedouin friend changed his name in 1960 to Abu Daoud upon the birth of his first son, as was the custom amongst the Bedouins. Now, in this gospel, which the church went to the most extreme ends to prevent you from reading, Jesus at one point said to his students, after having taught them for some time, quote, "I am no longer your master, because you have drunk from living water. You are enlivened by the bubbling source which I have caused to flow," unquote. Water is the source of all life. The currents of Vril energy are often compared to the currents of water, and the universal supply of Vril is referred to as a sea of Vril. Therefore, it is important to learn to drink water. The ancients drank water in small sips. Hold the water in your mouth for a while before you swallow. The ancients believed that it is more difficult to take Vril from water after it has been swallowed. Okay, so it is more difficult to absorb the Vril from the water after it has been swallowed. So hold that water in your mouth for a while. And this applies to hot drinks also. That is why we get so much pleasure from sipping tea or hot cider, for example. It is not just the flavor, but it is the process of sipping. And you can try this also with the various mineral waters. Just pour yourself a glass of a good mineral water and sip it like you would some fine wine, and you will experience the power in this water. You will experience the Vril energy. Also important, if you're asleep and having a dream of water, please drink the water. Absolutely do everything you can do to drink that water in your dream. It will come to you, the opportunity will come to you, the dream will come to you. you. You just must remember to get down on your hands and knees and drink the water directly from the stream, or get down on your hands and knees and cup the water in your hands and drink it out of the cup of your hands. Vril is the life force of the universe. Our planet is riddled with underground streams, which from time to time rise up to the surface. We have spoken about the human spinal cord being often likened to a serpent. However, another mighty symbolism is that the human spinal cord is similar to what is called the world tree. Let's stay with the tree symbolism for a moment. Great forces pull up the water from the ground, higher and higher and higher through the trunk of the tree and out through the branches until the holy water enters the leaves. The double helix of the caduceus represents the flow of Vril energy through us, moving down through the spinal column. The energy goes through a transformation at the bottom of the spinal column, and then the Vril energy is sent back up again to go through another cycle of transformation. We must cease to project. In silence, we will be told about the mysteries of the world. In no God will we be able to find the true God. No matter how we might try to fight it, we all must go to sleep. We all must crash. This is a fabulously interesting word for sleep, because in life we often have times of suffering where we are in awful pain, where we literally crash. Those who are in 12-step programs know all about the concept of hitting bottom. We must hit bottom in order to resurrect, to wake up and rise up, all through a death experience. Vril energy can be used to create magnetism and what people call good luck. We spoke in the last podcast about holding oneself with dignity, walking with dignity. This is a great clue to learning how to create magnetism and good luck. Do not move fast. Notice how quickly you walk. Many individuals speed along the walkway or sidewalk quite quickly, especially if you live in a big city. These people are not in their bodies. They treat their bodies like they are beasts that they are riding, as if they were a rider on a horse. Vril power is generated by walking slowly. Immediately, people will look at you and be fascinated by you. They will wonder what you are all about, what you know, why you have the right to walk slowly when all the rest of us, quote unquote, have to walk fast. You will become a kind of royalty. The rivers of living water are called by many names. Vril is just one of the names. Prana, Chi, vital force, orgone, odic force, mana, ki, animal magnetism, bioplasma, the invisible substance, ether, and matrix are just some other names. However, we warn you repeatedly to not become someone who can just regurgitate information, like someone who intellectually talks about the life force. You must drink from these waters, and living water is enormously powerful, intoxicating, and it is stronger than paint thinner because it strips away our outer selves. Essentially, it flays us so that we can see our muscles and organs. Great things happen in the dark. Have you ever thought about the fact that our outer skin hides from ourselves and from other people our organs? Our spiritual teachers are not trained in teaching us about the dark. Now, I'm not talking about true spiritual teachers. I am talking about your average spiritual teacher who hangs up a shingle and who charges you a fortune for their little workshop. But the neo-pagans Wiccans, those who explore the traditions of the witches or Wiccans, those who explore the Norse traditions, the mystery traditions, do explore the night and the dark. But at times I want to vomit with all this talk by these modern teachers about light, and more light. Not because light is the wrong way to go, but because these teachers do not know that the dark is the guardian of the light within it. Like the darkness of the womb is the guardian of the baby inside it, or the darkness of the earth is the guardian of the seed. The darkness of the earth is also the guardian of the diamond, of gold, of all the precious minerals that lie deep in the darkness of the earth. There is a mystical belief that there exists an axis around which the quote-unquote world revolves. Many ancient people even spoke of a quote world navel, unquote, and quote world mountain, unquote. There was one world navel named Atala. This was during the time of ancient India. Both the ancient Indians and the sentient beings from Atala had what were known as Vimanas. Vimanas were ancient spacecraft. This is confirmed in the scriptures called the Vedas and the Mahabharata. Read the Vedas, read the Mahabharata. The people of Atala had much better Vimanas than did the people of India. But these Vimanas were no clunky spacecraft. The wars between India and Atala reached the surface of the moon. This war was going on around 12,000 years ago. This was the real Star Wars. Remember how I've taught you that true wisdom is passed through books of fiction, novels, and through good films and movies? Many Hollywood screenwriters have developed relationships with people in the military and various shadow government agencies who are more than willing to pass on information as long as it is only used as supposedly fictional science fiction stories. And of course, we are not naive. Often this information is information that is subject to controlled release. The slowly released information to the public by the government when and how they are ready to release it. Also, in this time of the Patriot Act, when you cannot even say that you were interviewed by representatives of the government under penalty of years in jail, one of the few ways to disseminate the truth is through writing a seemingly innocent quote-unquote science fiction or thriller fantasy story. It is time for the historians to go to the public confessional and admit that they have been hoodwinking the public for centuries now, deliberately making us think that we humans have been primitive beings who only began to start evolving quote-unquote modern culture around 3000 BCE. They have withheld information from us that is our birthright. It is our story as the human race. This falsification of our history permits the ugly negative force that dwells on our planet and which manipulates the world to make us believe that the glory of humanity are the ugly, overcrowded, super materialistic mega cities we have built, like New York City, like Mexico City. Humanity does not belong living in tiny little boxes called apartments piled on top of each other, sometimes 50 stories high or more. We belong with gardens, growing our own food, knowing our neighbors, and celebrating with them, living under the stars, seeing the glory of the one universe universal reality as it reveals its beauty in the alternation of the seasons, in the rhythms of day and night, and the beauty of autumn leaves blowing and circling around the trees of spectacular colors. We don't belong being squashed as human sardines as we push, shove, and trample each other onto the metro, onto the subway, with no respect for our sacred bodies, or as animals being herded onto trains, being led to the slaughter. I had a very good friend, may he rest in peace, who would wait on the subway platform, and you know how people know where the subway doors will open. Not in all subways or metros, but I know in New York City and in other cities, people know exactly where the doors will open, and they will all gather in clumps in this area, and when the doors open, they will shove one another and trample one another to get onto the train. Well, my friend would deliberately stand away from these huddles of humanity. Now, he knew by standing by himself that most of the time he would have to stand all the way for 40-50 minutes on the train ride into Manhattan, into New York City. But he himself would rather stand with dignity than sit as a slimy worm, a slimy animal that fought and shoved his way onto the train just to get a seat. He stood and lived his life with human dignity. Now, Attila means quote-unquote white island. Does Attila not sound somewhat like the word Atlantis? There is something called the language of the birds. I have advised you to read the books of William Henry. Now, I have advised you to read William Henry's books because he writes a lot of information about the language of the birds, and he uses the language of the birds. He knows the language of the birds, and he knows about wormholes, and he knows about stargates. Essentially, one way of using the language of the birds, which is supposedly humanity's first language, is to allow oneself to be led from one word to another through the vibrational sound of the words, the vibrational similarity, rather than the academic rules of etymology. So even though the etymologist may say there is no connection between two words, if they sound alike, they are alike. If they sound alike, they are connected, period. Use this technique, and it will lead you to great wisdom. You can use it for the most mundane things, like where someone is hiding the things they stole from you, to the most sublime understanding of how we are being transformed by energies flowing from the center of the Milky Way. These beliefs are very much realities to the peoples of the past, and even to some indigenous peoples who are living on the planet today, like some Native American tribes, Amerindians, who believe in a world mountain, the center of the universe. The beings of Attila developed a new craft. They were long, cylindrical craft. They were extremely fast. It was an anti-gravity craft, armed with particle beam weapons. And these craft were called Vilixi, after Attila sank beneath the waves, unexpectedly for some. It was thought that their horrible technology, the Vilixi, were lost forever. Yet, not so amazingly, we know about Project Paperclip in the United States. Well, the Vilixi reappeared in the USSR, also known as the Soviet Union. They can be seen in newly released film clips flying alongside so Soviet MiG-21 fighters. The Vilixi were called the Andromeda Project. In Peru, there is something called Sacsayhuaman, a walled complex near the old city of Cusco at an altitude of 3,701 meters, or 12,000 feet. This site is part of the city of Cusco. When the Spanish conquerors arrived first to these lands, they could not explain to themselves how these Peruvian quote-unquote Indians, now believe it or not, they actually believed that the indigenous Peruvians were one or more animal species. Yes, and this was often thought about the Black Americans, or the black people who came to America, as well as the black people who already were in North America when the Europeans arrived. But back to the Spanish conquerors, they could not understand how the indigenous Peruvians could have built such amazing structures as these walls. Their religious fanaticism led them to believe that all that was simply the work of demons or malign spirits. When your employer grants you, out of the goodness of his heart, or because he has to by law, or she has to, when he or she grants you your disgustingly short vacation, quote-unquote, once a year, do not waste this valuable time laying on some beach getting drunk, further dulling your senses and your dignity as a human being. This is exactly what the evil overlords want you to do with your money and free time. Do you think they forget anything in their complete control over you? You who they consider their slaves? Go to South America. Explore the great buildings, skeletons, artifacts, ruins. Meet your ancestors, your majestic heritage. Go on trips to these places. They are inexpensive. Frequently, your money often lasts much longer there than in some Caribbean resort, and you will come back feeling fulfilled with a renewed sense of purpose and destiny. I suggest you investigate Mesoamerica, Mexico, Guatemala, and South America, including Peru. You can travel to the most amazing places, and with a complete tour package if you wish, for the same price as a trip to Club Med, to Disney World, or some place where you just get drunk and have orgies for a week. That's just where the government wants you to go. They want you to stay happy, drunk, screwed, and come back to work as good automatons, good robots. In December 1919, a small circle of persons from the Thule, the Vril, met in a specially rented forester's lodge near Berchtesgaden, Germany. Remember, 1919. They were accompanied by the medium known as Maria Orsic and another medium only known as Sigrun. Maria had mediumistically received transmissions in a secret Templar script, a language unknown to her, with the technical data for the construction of a flying machine. According to Vril documents, these telepathic messages came from the solar system Aldebaran, which is 68 light years away in the constellation Taurus. I would like to present here a short summary of the messages the Vril mediums had received over the years, and which form the basis for all further actions by the Vril Gesellschaft Russia, quote, "The solar system, Aldebaran, has a sun around which revolve 2 inhabited planets that form the empire Sumeran. The population of the Aldebaran system is divided into the race of, quote, light god people, unquote, and several other human races that had developed by negative mutation from the god people because of climatic changes upon the planets. Around 500 million years ago, the light god people, quote unquote, started to colonize other Earth-like planets after the expansion of the sun, Aldebaran, and the resulting heat had made the original planets uninhabitable. It is said that in our system they first colonized the planet Molona, also called Maldek, Marduk, or by the Russians Phaeton, which existed in the area of today's asteroid belt. Then, between Mars and Jupiter, Mars was next. The proof for a highly developed race on Mars is run by the well-known face on Mars and the Pyramid City, which has been photographed by the Mars probe Viking in 1976. It is assumed that the race of Sumeran Aldebaran then also came to Earth for a first visit, witnessed by the petrified impression of a shoe found to be about 500 million years old and squashed under the heel of a tribolite, a trilobite, a little crayfish that lived then upon Earth and became extinct about 400 million years ago. And these fossils of the trilobites are very common and very inexpensive to obtain, and I urge you to obtain fossils, and especially to obtain amber. Amber has very powerful forces, and amber with actual insects or flora or fauna inside the amber. Now, I've mentioned this before in previous podcasts that museums are hiding in their basements the most incredible archaeological finds, including the combination of human footprints and dinosaur footprints. The Vril people thought that later, when Earth became slowly more habitable, the race of Aldebarans landed in Mesopotamia and formed the master caste of the Sumerians. The Vril telepaths also found that the Sumerian language was very similar to that of the Aldebarans, and it also sounds somewhat similar to the German language. We cannot know whether these statements about Aldebaran were based on facts, but the construction plans and the technical details that the Vril telepaths received, wherever they came from, were so accurate that they led to the most fantastic idea men ever begot: the construction of a flying machine for the other side. Now, also to be remembered is that at a certain point, the Nazis took over the research of this Vril society, and so because of the necessity to keep themselves alive and in the good graces of their Nazi warlords, these people of the Vril society may have from time to time thrown the Nazi warlords a bone, as the expression goes, and given them information that seemed to go along with the Nazi philosophy of the super race. Bear that in mind. Please keep that in mind. during the early phase of, quote, alternative science, or Dr. W.O. Schumann of the Technical University in Munich, both a Thule and a Vril member, held a speech, a section of which is going to be related by me now. But first I would like to say that the concept of a quote-unquote alternative science emerged from the Vril Society work. Today one would say alternative energy forms, but they only started working on the project 3 years later. Now, the words of Dr. Schumann, quote, "In everything we recognize two principles that determine the events: light and darkness, good and evil, creation and destruction. As in electricity we know plus and minus. It is always either or," unquote. These two principles, the creative and the destructive, also determine our technical means. He went on to say, everything destructive is of satanic origin. Everything creative is divine. Every technology based upon explosion or combustion has thus to be called satanic. The coming new age will be based on the age of a new positive divine technology, unquote. This is from the secret German archives. Now some of you may be thinking, well, Laurence Galian, are you saying that UFOs, ovnis, are just manufactured by human beings? I want to go on the record and state it is clear the technology used to create ovnis and UFOs has come from off-planet sources, and a large number of UFOs have come to Earth from an enormous list of star systems without our galaxy, from other galaxies, as well as from other dimensions. I also want to interject that the very same mathematics that prove we are living on the surface of the Earth also simultaneously prove that we are living on the inside surface of the Earth. I'm going to repeat that again. The very same mathematics, the same formulas that prove that we are living on the surface of the Earth also simultaneously prove that we are living in the inside of the Earth. There is no way, mathematically speaking, to say whether we live on the outside or the inside of the Earth. I just thought I'd throw that in as a little food for thought. Purity. It is usually achieved on a physical level through cleansing with water. We take showers, we take baths. The first step on the ascent of Jacob's ladder consists of correcting one's own faults. The first step of the first rung of Jacob's ladder is purification. You can't just jump over this step to something you might think is something better or more interesting. We correct these faults because we want to grow. The most important fault, the one thing that must be redeemed, is our impatience. Become patient and you will be able to achieve almost anything. I tell you that more than any complicated psychological reason, the reason why society is so nervous, so depressed, while people need so much alcohol, so much sugar, drugs, and other mind-numbing substances, is that we cannot be patient. You may think that this is absurd, but I ask you not to make a judgment about what I am saying to you, but to just listen, put it in your back pocket, and wait and see if reality bears out what I am saying or proves me wrong. But stay away from judgmentalism. Learn to be patient, and then you will begin to see and feel great changes happening in your life. And as the law of correspondence teaches us, by frequently bathing or showering, we are vibrationally causing our entire being to come into a state of purity. We know about the Big Bang, just as the great tides come in and out, as the waves crash upon the shore and then withdraw out, just to once again come crashing back on the shore again, just as sure as summer's blasting heat gives way to winter's freezing cold, and then the ice melts and we are back in summer again, so too the entire universe breathes great cosmic breaths, the great exhaling of manifestation, then an inhaling where all is gathered back together again, followed by another exhalation. As the human being sleeps, so too does the universe. The Big Bang is just the larger version of us waking up in the morning. Why did the ancient wisdom masters teach us that as above, so below? Because the universe is alive just as much as you are a living, conscious being. During the Big Bang, we can account for the matter and energy, at least to some degree. Yet where did the great laws of existence come from? Did you ever pause to think about that? Who created the law of gravity, the law of the strong and weak force, the law of thermodynamics, the law of the nuclear force, the electromagnetic force, and so on? Permeating our physical body is what is known as the etheric body, also known as the life body. This is the force that is most clearly seen in all plant life, in the trees, the flowers, the abundance of plant growth we see in the jungle, the vast, almost unstoppable growth of the mighty redwood forest. Have you ever considered your height as compared to the height of the trees on your property? Just think for a moment about it. Think about the tallest man on earth compared to the height of the tallest redwood tree. Why is this? It is because of the fact that the etheric is life itself, and unchecked it will keep growing and growing. However, we have more and other bodies that just our physical and etheric bodies comprise. We have our astral bodies. We have our egoic bodies. We have the life spirit, and so on and so forth. But the etheric body, the life body, is the source of long life, of longevity. It is the source of strength, physical endurance, and when focused very carefully, the life body, the etheric, can be the source of powerful, focused energy. Here are some exercises to strengthen your etheric body and to begin to achieve coherence in your etheric body, to achieve integrity in your etheric body. Do these exercises or don't do them. It's not my job to watch over you, only to give you the information. The hero realizes that he or she must do the work, him or herself. Nobody is going to hold your hand. You can elect to be one of the millions of faceless robots, or you can be of those who advance the cause of human cosmic evolution. First, ask yourself if you are right or left-handed. Then, set yourself a task, a significant task, to do with your non-dominant hand For example, if you are left-handed, brush your teeth from now on with your right hand and get good at it. If you are right-handed, when you are in the shower or in the bathtub, wash yourself with your left hand. Learn to do these tasks perfectly with a non-dominant hand. Then, when you can do small things, such as these, graduate to larger tasks, such as writing with your non-dominant hand. Get yourself a notebook from Walmart or your local stationery store, the papeleria. Pretend you are back in first grade, and with your non-dominant hand, teach yourself to write out the entire alphabet in block or print letters. Then move on to script letters. Finally, begin writing sentences with your non-dominant hand. After all, Da Vinci wrote upside down and backwards. Do you want to make a difference like Da Vinci? Or do you want to be known as the guy with a big graphic novel collection? Seriously, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. It is true. It is said, and it is true, that if you spend 1 hour per day for just 1 year studying any subject, you will be an authority on that subject at the end of the year. This may say something about our society, but nevertheless, it is true. Stop making excuses for yourself and get out there with me and let's make a difference. We are the metaphysical freedom fighters. We want to be happy, but we do not want to change. But our attitudes are why we are not happy. We are always in the presence of some kind of repair. The experts, the scientists, the government, they're always telling us that if we only do such and such, we can solve, for example, world poverty. The war on drugs is a perfect example. However, we cannot cure a problem at the level of the problem. We cannot cure a problem at the level of the problem. You have to face that the cycle of growth is by proper, intelligent education, by being taught the laws of life. Learn about correspondences. Please purchase a book by Aleister Crowley. It is called simply 777, okay? 3 sevens. And you will begin to understand the interlocking laws of correspondence. And this is one of the powerful secrets that the great Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes, gave to us in the Emerald Tablet. Read something of Gnosticism, of the Gnostic Gospels, of Buddhism. Serve the good, refrain from evil, purify the mind. Put together all the analogies, all the parallels, all the correspondences. This ends the transmission for today. We will make contact again soon.